with us today on 8760 is Nathan Grube, Tournament Director of Travelers Championship, and Gabby Lucivero, lead sports anchor at NBC Connecticut. And I suppose, Sam Barrett, executive producer of Shaping CT's Future. What's something that you are anticipating kind of being a key element of conversation as we think about Connecticut sports and entertainment impact? Is it something that you feel like the broad population sees Connecticut as a leader, a laggard? Is there opportunity here? What's the general, kind of consensus that you both think exists in Connecticut?
I think in my 2 cents, Gavin, you can pile on and say that's the biggest pile of whatever, or you can agree with me. So, first of all, your intro was Sam, kind of lackluster. I really am come on, a little more energy on that.
This is what happens when you're a co-host.
He made that clear, right? And no, so I think that's thanks for.
He gets a lot of face time.
Fair enough. Thank you for having us here, first of all. But that's I think an interesting question because I came here from out of market. I got here in 2005, and it was funny because there's kind of a certain feeling about professional sports in Connecticut, right? And usually the conversation is around what you're not. Oh, we're not this. Remember when Robert Kraft did this? Remember when the Whalers did this? There's a lot of remember or what we're not. And when I came in, I wasn't, I don't know if burden's the right word, but I didn't have that history, right? So I come in and I'm like, oh my gosh, this market's got a PGA Tour event. We're right in between Boston and New York. How amazing is this? And people will be like, here's what we're not. But I'm like, but man, look what we are. We have these, I have on-site parking. There are PGA Tour events that would be they don't even understand that concept. And it's 30-minute bus ride. It is, the golf course isn't built for crowds. And I'm like, we are so lucky to have this event in this market. And that's not even a line. I go to other events, I'm like, oh, I feel bad for them. They don't have the infrastructure and the ability to do it. So kind of that, I came into it, this event with, I would say, a bias that people had in this market about, oh, we can't support this. And I'm like, no, but here's what we can do. And so fast forward, we have players in from all over the world, right? The PGA Tour is a global brand, and we're very fortunate with Travelers as our title to have one of the top events, on tour. Sure. And to have it with no other event in New England, Boston had an event that doesn't have one anymore, right? New York had some things, it doesn't have them anymore. They have come and gone for reasons. This event has only gotten stronger. And when the players come here, they talk about what an amazing environment this is. They're like, it starts at the airport. People are so welcoming, so appreciative, so thankful that we're here. We love it. And then it goes to the media who travel from market to market. And they're like, it's just the red carpet is rolled out for us. Connecticut has something to offer that other markets don't have. And I was paid a compliment by a guy, a tour player. He goes, I don't know how this community does it, but somehow for global athletes, you make this event feel like a home game for all of us. And just kind of and I was like, that you could not have paid a better compliment because that is a compliment to our volunteers, to our title sponsor. It starts with Travelers and the brand that they want this to be. They want this to be a brand of we are taking care of you, right? What's their business? They take care of people, right? Their philosophy is you want to see the red umbrella and think, okay, I'm going to get taken care of. If something happens, they're thinking about me, I want to get taken care of. So that's kind of the quote unquote air quotes for those listening. That's the personality of the event is we're going to take care of you. And so when you get the media and people to say, how did you make this feel like a home game? I'm like, that is an advantage that Connecticut has. So I'm going to answer your question, I swear. I'm sorry, I'm getting there. But it's an advantage that Connecticut has that other markets don't have. Good luck going to Dallas and making it feel like a home game. No offense against Dallas, I love it. Or LA or whatever. You are visiting there and you are making your way to the golf course, but have that thing feel like a home game. And that, I think, has led to the growth of the event. So, Gabby, those are my opening comments, Gabby.
Okay. Well, I think to jump off of that, when I came here 7 years ago, and I was coming from Western New York. I'm from Massachusetts. But a lot of people go, well, what do you even cover in Connecticut? You're a sports reporter in Connecticut. What do you even cover? And I had a great example last year where it was late May, And so I know I'm leading up to the Travelers. In fact,
you were.
I was stressed because we had a lot that we needed to do for the Travelers, and I kept having to put it on the back burner because we had 1 week where it was the Connecticut Sun home opener, which was Caitlin Clark making her WNBA debut, and in the middle and the next day or two, we had Simone Biles in town competing at the XL Center. And I'm going, what do I cover in Connecticut? I just had Caitlin Clark and Simone Biles in my state stressing me out to figure out how I'm gonna cover all of this. And then next week I got to get out to TPC River Highlands and talk to Nathan Grube because we need to figure out how we're previewing the Travelers Championship. Yeah. Oh, the PGA Tour event that's coming in over the summer. And we used to joke that, we joke now, there is no off season for us. So it's actually a great space to be a sports reporter in Connecticut, and the best way to answer, what are we a boon? Do we have it? Is that I never have an off season now, and that says just how many sports we have going on throughout the entire year.
Yeah, I think most people think, the big four, right? And that's if you don't have a major team, then there are a ton of minor league baseball, MLS soccer. We have PGA tournament, and it feels like there's almost kind of like to what you were saying from the outside looking in, right? Everyone here is like, I'm kind of in the middle of New York and Boston, but that's an opportunity, and we have a little bit of everything, and it seems like you don't have an off season, right? Because there's a little bit of everything, there's all sports get their due, but you may just not have the single, NFL team, so to speak. But with UConn's success that, and Quinnipiac and hockey and there's seems to be a kind of a consistent growth of focus on sport in Connecticut. What is that, or how does that translate to economic boom? Does it, or, are you asked to quantify that for the state in any way, or, the communities that are benefiting from the traffic, headache that you have to overcome?
What? That was like a leading question. Do communities benefit from the traffic headache? That wasn't cool. So I will say this, that I'm going to answer that kind of very broadly, that we did an economic impact study a few years ago. And I mean, it's in the economic impact studies are very interesting, kind of how they calculate and the formulas that they use. And there's some very interesting math that goes into these. And so I'm like, wait, what are you calculating? How do you figure this out? But it's fascinating how they dive into it. And we're an interesting one because on one side, we are 5 days, right? There are 5 days that the public is coming. That's it. Like Q1 for us is like Wednesday. Second quarter of our business is like Thursday and half of Friday, right? So we are very concentrated from one standpoint. But on the other standpoint, we started the build. As soon as the ground thawed, we start the build. And it takes us over 2 months to build. So we have work crews. We have all kinds of staying in hotels, eating at restaurants, using, equipment facilities, stuff like that, renting a bunch of stuff. There are things being delivered, and the build is 2 months, and it's about a month afterwards. So we're there for about 90 days from a just construction standpoint every year, right? We didn't just build a stadium and then we show up and it's there. So we kind of have that side of it. And then we also have, I mentioned this earlier, we have the charitable side of it too, from an economic impact. So we're in a really unique situation with the PGA Tour event. For those listening, some people may know this, some people may not, but PGA Tour events are run by nonprofits. I sit as the executive director of a foundation. Now, we exist to run the Travelers Championship. So what happens is the money comes into the foundation, we pay our bills, and then whatever is left goes out to charity. So last year it was a little over $3.2 million that went to over 200 charities. So we had our charity kickoff last week, and I'm sitting in the room talking to, about 150 charities came. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Some of them don't know anything about golf. They just got a check from the Travelers Championship. And we had them get up and talk about what they did and who they served. So when you talk about economic impact, there's not just the nuts and bolts of we have workers here eating in restaurants, staying in hotels. We have charities serving the social fabric of our community that, like, what's the social impact of that, right? Like, how many meals were driven to homes of people who couldn't eat without the funding that came from the tournament? You know, how many homes were built for veterans who could not live in a normal house? I mean, this guy spoke from Homes for Our Troops, and we cut him a check for $60,000 to build a home for one of these vets. So when it's not just an economic impact for us, there's a social impact. But when you add all that up, I mean, I think the estimate was about $60 million for the state. And here's the other piece of that too, is the purse is $20 million for the players. Like, that's nice. Like, the guy that wins our event's going to win a little over $3.6 million. Like, not a bad day at the office. But on that $20 million purse, they're paying Connecticut income tax on that. When they file back through the tour, they made that money in our state. So the state, like, it's not just a social impact. Like, there are real dollars going back to the state from this tournament from an economic impact standpoint. And it's not this thing where we had to, like, lean on taxpayers to build a stadium, or we had to, like, we're not negotiating. Like, this is the public sector is involved in this, but the private sector is funding it for the benefit of the state. And then the state gets, the governor is incredibly supportive, but they use it as an economic development tool, but it's not a burden in a sense. It's not like, man, okay, I got to sell this, we got to add a tax of extra. They got to build and nothing against building stadiums. I mean, because they have, 40, 50 games a year, stuff like that. It's a different model, but I don't know. So that's the economic impact, social impact. And I think when you look at it like that, it's, I could obviously talk about that for a while. So.
Well, I feel like because I found out like this firsthand, the business model that you guys have. When I was speaking with Taylor the other day, because I got in touch about Open Doors Outdoors, because we're running our golf tournament at the same time, and I was apologizing to Nathan for drawing his fan base away.
It is. We're the second biggest golf tournament compared to that.
Sorry, I don't have time for you this year. I gotta go over here.
But I got the chance to talk to Taylor and like to learn about like the money that goes back into the community, and to like nobody knows this, right? At least I don't know if it's like that, if it's common knowledge.
We do our best.
She does a phenomenal job telling that story.
I think it's like when you think about like that prevailing sentiment of like, we don't have a football team or a baseball team or whatever. And it's like, you mentioned the things, it's like, oh, we don't have this. Instead of focusing on what you do have, it's like the stories that come out, just like what you said in terms of the economic and the social impact. It's like getting more of that narrative into the public consciousness to help like shift whatever negative sentiment there is because we don't have the Whalers or the Patriots deciding not to come.
It is a tougher story to tell though, because it's, I don't want to speak for you, but it probably doesn't fit into live sports coverage or, and it's not, but then it's also not necessarily breaking news or, kind of prime time worthy. So it's like this public interest, ongoing impact and how it's permeating, and when those checks are written, it's not, the tournament's not going on.
I mean, I would say it doesn't fit into the old narrative of what sports broadcasting is. It doesn't fit into the major ESPN model of sports storytelling, because you're right. That's where you want to go. If I'm tuning in to highlights, I want to see who was leading that day. But when you look at local sports, I'm not producing local sports for somebody who necessarily, I'll give you the leaderboard and we'll get you some highlights. But my main viewers are the ones who maybe don't know what the Travelers Championship is, and they don't care that Rory just won the Masters, but they do want to know how much money he maybe would donate if he would, like when Bubba Watson donated a huge portion. So the former, yes, when it was just highlights, but now our entire sports storytelling model is community driven. So it actually does really fit with what we do, because that helps me justify to my manager, say, hey, I do want to go cover this if you have, when you guys put your charity numbers out, that's a story I run in sports. And news will run it. But that's a story that I take and put in my sportscast. So I think that we focus on the story behind the story, because a lot of people don't care about the final score, but they might come out to the Travelers if they know that, wow, they donated $3 million to charities in our state last year. That's how we drive people there. And the more people that come out there, then yeah, maybe I can do an extra 30 seconds of highlights because they go, look at how big this crowd was. They totally want to know about the golf. So it's really one thing feeds the other. The more I can tell people about the stories behind it, the more people come out, and then the more I maybe do get to talk about sports. I wish that I could just get up and do a sportscast where I tell you only about the event and only about the field of play, but that is more a rarity now. You know, when we go cover, you know, UConn women winning a national championship, yeah, we'll give you the highlights, but that's 30 seconds of the show. The other 2.5 minutes are, you know, what is Paige Becker is doing for her teammates, and what did we learn about freshman phenom Sarah Strong, and she's learning how to play the piano, like stuff like that. Because I'm going, yeah, my dad may want to see. This is how I produce my sportscast. I go, okay, Dad, Jim Lucivero, he's going to want to see the sportscast. He's going to want to know how UConn won the national championship. Mom, yeah, that's nice that she got the score, and she's an athletic lady. She does want the score, but Mom is going, oh, well, that's really nice that Paige was up cooking breakfast for her teammate Jana during Ramadan before sunrise. And then you put them both together, and then Mom wants to tune in for the national championship game because she goes, oh, I want to see how that nice Paige girl is doing. And then my dad's going, she had a 40-point game last night. I want to see how she's going. So we do both.
Do you think that that's evolved maybe more rapidly because of the shift in access through social media? You know, now the incentive to be even more public with NIL dollars and things like that. So it's like people are seeking that just
connection.
Deeper level, like, you know, something that's different, that's not, that they can't just get on a social feed, or they can't just readily access. So they're hoping, they're kind of tuning in to this local relationship, thinking that maybe, you know, they're going to find a story that isn't going to be broadcast as headlines everywhere else.
100%. It's why do we go, when I know that ESPN's going to air the national championship game and I can't shoot that game, I can't get my own video of that game, why do I go? Because I'm going to be taking those highlights off TV, everything. I go because I get to be in the locker room speaking with the women who I've built a relationship over their 4 or 5 year career, who know me when I walk in the room, and then they may speak a little bit more openly, not just about their backstories, but also about the game. So what we can do is, you may get the highlights if you tune into SportsCenter. You're going to be able to tune into us, who are out at every single game, talking to these women at every single availability. So yeah, but the shift is, it's like I can see those highlights on social. I can pull up my phone and I'll see whatever I need to see. So how do I keep people coming to my sportscast? What do I do? Well, I got to figure out something to tell them that's new, and that's by building relationships, getting in the community, finding out what the backstory is behind, you know, your amateur who's coming in to play on the sponsor. What do we have? Who's coming in? So I think that's the only way we keep local sports driving.
How, because that's coming from, you know, your role as a media owner and a broadcaster. When it comes to like the teams or the tournaments, you know, is there an organization, whether it's the Sun, the Yard Goats, Travelers, who's doing it better, or like, you know, are the teams themselves effective storytellers as well, or is the emphasis more on the media owners and the storytellers outside of the organizations?
Well, I mean, you named 3 great entities that do a really good job, not just because you're sitting across from me.
No, go ahead. I'm not here. Go ahead.
You named 3 that do a really good job, that understand. It's a really fine line to walk, to look at the Yard Goats and say, I know that you have elite athletes in your stadium every night. I don't care what they're doing on the field. That's not true. But ultimately, I don't care that you have the Rockies' top prospect on your field. I want to know what your groundskeeper is doing to make this grass look so nice. And that's the fine line, because you want to respect the elite athletes that are in these organizations. The Connecticut Sun are another one, right? You want to respect that these women are the top athletes in the world, but also then you want to ask them about the outfit they wore, walking down in the tunnel, and that's even trickier. So how do you balance that? And I think the more we're seeing leagues and teams understand that more and more, so I think there is a really nice marriage happening right now that they understand that that's what we need as well. But it definitely is a fine line to walk, because you don't want to disrespect the fact that we have some phenomenal athletes, and they deserve to be celebrated for doing the thing that they're there for, and not only having to talk about, who did their hair. But sometimes we gotta.
People want to know. As far as, at least from your perspective, Nathan, are more and more businesses approaching you to explore ways to get involved in the tournament? Whether it's as promotional partnerships or I guess the underlying sort of question, is there opportunity for innovators or startups that are exploring new gear or new tech or, to kind of partner direct? And are you seeing more of those or any of those kind of come out of Connecticut to pilot something at Travelers?
So here's the amazing thing and the terrifying thing about what we do every year. Like, I alluded to this a few minutes ago. Like, we don't have a stadium, right? Like, we build our stadium every year, and then we tear it down every year. And then we build it every year, and then we tear it down every year. We build it every year. And I mean, so when we have partners come to us with ideas, every year in the fall is kind of our blank slate time. Like, we can be like, how do we want to design the layout this year? Do we want to put something new out by 5-6? What's our real estate look like? And we actually look at infrastructure. We look at grades. What if we leveled out that hill? Could we put another fan activation there? What if we did paved this part of the entrance and we could do that here? So we're always looking at our site, because we have a great facility. TPC River Highlands, the players love that golf course. We know we're going to be there for a long time. So we get to design what we want the fan experience to be.
That's pretty cool to terraform every year.
It's
Cool
horrible,
and stressful.
it's horrible and yet
But, like,
amazing at the same time, because like you're creating, like, everything has its own fire exit, everything has its own evac plan, everything has its own, capacity issues. So, but there is an element of, we're going to build what we want this to be every year. And so we start, obviously, the partners that come in with the biggest footprints, Travelers and, Stanley Black, they're like, they want to do different things. And so we do that. And then our fan zone, it's funny you said it about your mom and dad. So if you were to look at the progression of the tournament, just between us four here, right, you could tell what age my kids were as the focus on the stuff. Because I'm like, I got to build a fan zone. I want my kids coming out to the tournament. So all of a sudden we have rock walls and inflatables and mini golf courses. And as my kids,
daycare will be here.
The daycare will be here. And as my kids got older, I'm like, oh, we need concessions and food, So like, there is a total selfish play here, like, that I want them to think Dad's cool. So it's like this never-ending striving goal that I will never reach. But we do. Back to, I think, your question of, we've talked to a lot of Connecticut companies about, how they're trying to come to market, what ideas that they have. Is the Travelers Championship the right space for you to activate, to showcase? And I think the bigger we've gotten, it's been good and also challenging. It's been good because we're actually now attracting more global brands. Like, the bigger the tournament got, Rolex is showing up going, we want to be at your event and have a huge presence. MasterCard, we want to be at your event. Sorry if I'm like stepping on any sponsors of the show.
No.
But like,
don't say that.
So, please edit. But I mean, bigger global partners are seeing what this event is doing, how the broadcast is, what the ratings are, the players that are coming kind of the sports side, what eyeballs are going to be on TV. How's the storytelling? Is the tournament compelling? Is it not? And we have more global brands wanting to be a part of it. So that's great, but it's also, the fan zone is an area of interactive space. It's right in the middle of the golf course. It's the old driving range. And then we built a new driving range across the street. And so we had this massive, 15 acres in the middle of the golf course, almost 20 actually, I think, that we're like, what are we going to do with this? And so we started doing all these activations. There used to be a number of small activations, and now that's been taken up by like huge activations where the fans are like, that is so awesome, I want to be a part of that. So, but I would say we haven't said no to a regional company that's like, I want to do this. Like, I mean, there is obviously, well, hey, if you're going to take up, real estate, here's the cost of it, or here's the investment, or here's the partnership and things like that. But we try to get very creative, back to our point of like, we're building this thing every year. And sometimes it doesn't fit. Sometimes, somebody that's, trying to sell cigars and, tobacco, whatever, it's like, okay, we can't we can't tweak that. Or there's, when certain things are legalized in the state, we as a PGA Tour event can't highlight certain things in the state, So there are some restrictions, but I tend to be, I would say, a positive person to say, like, look, if you have an idea, like, what's your product? Let's figure out how to get out there. And if we can't, then how do we get you out there to tell your story? So one of the things about the charities, I love the charities that have no idea about professional golf. They're like, I couldn't tell you a birdie from a hawk. Like I don't even understand the game. But when you say, look, you don't have to understand the game, but I'm going to give you a media platform to tell your story, and we're going to cut you a check. How's that sound? Well, they're like, that's great. Like, we worked with a charity in 2016, and they said, the platform you gave us was more important than the money that you gave us. The money's nice, but the fact that we could come out, and the media are there covering the professional golf tournament, but they're there. We build studios for all of our local affiliates so that they can, we take on the cost, we build them a studio so that they can do their shows from out there, and they're doing their shows, and then we have a partnership. We can try to help you fill what you guys want to talk about. And they might want to talk about sports. Let's try to bring a player by. They might want to talk about the local ice cream vendor that we had out on 5, and all of a sudden she's in there with her husband and their little 4-year-old talking about like how they started this ice cream company in Connecticut, and like those things, we give a voice, we give money, we try to we live here, right? Like, I live in this town. Gabby, like, we understand what this event means to this community, so I think trying to leverage its assets the best that we can across multiple platforms is, I think, what we try to do.
Have you seen, like, the audience change in terms of, like, people that are coming to the tournament, like, based on how the events kind of not only differ year to year, but kind of, like, over time as you moved on from trying to appeal to 3-year-old children to teenage children, in your quest to become cool?
Quest to become cool? Yeah, the never-ending quest. I will say there's been a handful of moments that I remember where we kind of started to turn corners. The first one was when I got a call over the radio that said, "Hey, there's somebody scalping tickets in the parking lot." And I went, "Oh my God, we've arrived!" And that was
like music to your ears.
I had to be upset. I'm like, all right, we got to ask them not to. But I'm like, yes, we got scalpers. So like that was one moment. And I remember another time when. Oh God, there's so many. Scalpers was one, but when Jordan Spieth hit a shot in 2017, he hit a shot that he holed out of the bunker, and the place went absolutely crazy, and it ends up on SportsCenter, not local.
I wasn't here yet. I hadn't moved to Connecticut yet, so that one's not on me. But.
It ends up on SportsCenter, and like we've had these moments where we like set the stage. And like, whether it's charities, fans, scalpers, whatever it is, of like, have kind of like, we've kind of hit these milestones of like, okay, these are what the biggest events in the game deal with, right? These are what the biggest sports franchises have to deal with. What, are we going to deal with a sellout? We've never had to sell out before, but are we going to, from a fan experience standpoint, the event's gotten so popular, are we going to sell out? And we came really close in the Heat last year was a little bit of a challenge. In 22, we came really close for the first time, being like, that's it. From a general admission stand, which we've never done before. So, like, there's these moments where I've been able to look back and I'm like, oh, man. But, when the practice facility got built, when the new clubhouse got built. But, all of this, I mentioned Travelers earlier, all of this is unsustainable without a title sponsor, right? We could all sit around and have these amazing ideas, want to tell these phenomenal stories. But this is why smaller markets don't have big sporting events or teams, is because it's expensive. And but the reasons why Travelers is doing this, the charity piece, the community piece, they have 1,800 of their employees that volunteer for the event on their own. Like, they're doing it for all the right reasons, and they know economically what it means to the state. And so that you get that core, and that's about half the
Why did Boston fail then? Like, what happened? Because that's a major market. You would assume that. Is that just?
You go. I don't know because I'm not. But just from the outside,
I'm not answering that. I like my job. So.
but on the outside looking in, you go. There's a lot of other things to do, and not saying Connecticut doesn't have other things to do, but you're going. How do we compete? Folks in Connecticut are looking for something to do, and then you guys deliver on let me give you something to do, because we're gonna cover this tournament every year, but you make it it's easier to cover when you're bringing in the big names, and I'm not having to do somersaults to figure out, okay, how do I make this interesting? It just inherently is. But so, I mean, in Boston, you've got, first off, I mean, it's outside of Boston, so I don't know how much that factors into it. But yeah, I think that you've got so many other options to choose from, and it's, if you're gonna be the only game in town, be a really good game. You know?
That's going on the next t-shirt. That's going on the next t-shirt.
So, I guess, what are you seeing as far as broadcast, and then the evolution of the, streaming, exclusive access? How has that impacted, how you think about either coverage or putting together, your package for how you negotiate the next broadcast deal, or, sort of media rights?
I would say, I don't know if that affects how you cover or what. Media right, like, that's not something we negotiate. And so, like, the PGA Tour itself negotiates all the broadcast rights and the broadcast deals. We are basically like a franchise of that. So I get, not in a bad way, I get handed a network like, hey, you're going to be on CBS. NBC Sports is going to cover you Thursday, Friday. CBS is going to be there Saturday, Sunday. Here's what Jim Nance is going to do. Here's what ESPN Plus is going to do. And so, like, I kind of get handed that. And then to Gabby's point, what we try to do then is we're like, okay, who's coming? Now we're going to take care of you. Now that you're assigned to our event, we're going to make sure we are the easiest event for you to cover on the planet. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out what our partners need, right? Like, how do we help you do your job? And when we built those studios,
Ben & Jerry's hasn't been in the media tent in a little bit. Just saying.
Hold on, where's my notepad? But do we throw you a pizza party? Are you there on Friday night?
Boy, am I.
Okay. So, just how we feed them, how the shuttles that we try to, set up for them. Once we know who our media partners are, we try to make sure. It's a very simple thing. How can we help you do your job? Like, I can't tell the stories. Like, I don't know how to do what Gabby does, but I want to give Gabby the tools to do her job, right? What do you need? You need these elements to tell the story. Now functionally,
I need
you
a
need
golf
power,
cart,
internet,
and I need
golf
ice
cart.
cream.
You need ice cream. Got it. I'm picking up a theme.
Take it or leave it.
I'm picking up on the theme. So that's when it comes to distribution, stuff like that. Like, they did a huge relationship with ESPN a few years ago. I had nothing to do with that, but there was a lot more ESPN people showing up at the tournament that I made sure that we were going to be different.
Are you asked to police it on the other side, though? Like,
No.
from, those that want to kind of air it on their own, or?
We are not. We're not involved in that at all. So that either is a good thing or bad. I don't know. But,
And that really ultimately falls on the network and what their media rights deal is with the PGA Tour, or however that gets packaged and handed to you. And so from our perspective, certain places are easier to cover. Everywhere that's going to be a televised event has their own media rights deal. And so at Travelers, it doesn't impact us too much. Where the only spot that it ever impacts us is if the broadcast on Sunday night runs past 6 p.m. or past 6:20 anyway, which is where you get a nice scoreboard from me, because the rights deal with CBS is that I can't air those highlights until it's over. So that's something that impacts me. But other than that, my access is exactly the same as as this Channel 3 who may come in, who's a CBS affiliate. Mine is the exact same at that event. But when there's different deals, my access is limited. So at the NCAA tournament, my camera can't go anywhere near the basketball court. Like, if I even try to walk out there with it, they'll stop me and make me turn around and put it down. So it just depends on what the media deal is, and it does make it more difficult for us, where everything is moving towards social. And how do we package this? Well, a lot of media rights deals were created before it really, and they're just kind of going on this. So if I want to post highlights from your tournament, even if I shot it, there's fine print in there that says I can't do it. Well, NBC Connecticut can't, but if I'm a fan and I take a video,
that's the weird part about it.
So it's so nuanced. So it hamstrings us a lot. And that is something that we have conversations about all the time, is figuring out, because they haven't quite evolved as streaming has gotten bigger. And I think that we're reaching the turning point. I certainly hope, from my perspective, because the more and more, if we do a show that's only broadcast on our FAST channel, if it doesn't go over the air, which we do sometimes if we're preempted by golf, we'll go just on our streaming. And that means that if I want to run Red Sox highlights from, that's just got to be a scoreboard. So you get a very different product if we're only straight to streaming, because those media rights deals just haven't quite caught up with the way that everybody is producing their shows now.
So if like the PGA or like the NCAA, so they basically hold all the cards and dictate like the terms and conditions. But is there any kind of like feedback loop where, because if something's not working or there's something that's working well in a particular market, is there the opportunity to say to the PGA, hey, this is what worked well, so when you're doing your thing, at least they're making an informed decision in order to be able to cater to audiences more effectively? Or is it just
I think
every
somebody
year?
higher up the knee would have to call somebody higher up the knee.
I will say here's where the feedback loop hits us. Like, we will have somebody like Gabby come and say, like, man, we have a new technology that can do X, Y, and Z. I would love to be able to cover this way. And then I would say, currently we don't have the regs. And then I go back to the tour, and if there is a 4 or 5 of these conversations that I've had, and I go back to the tour and say, look, I don't know what you're hearing in other markets, but like, we are holding, these are a little bit archaic, and we're holding our partners back. And then I think what you were talking about, like, we have partners who want to pay us for certain things. Hey, I want to be able to do X and activate at your tournament. And, you know, whether it's, you call it influencers, or whether it's brands, or whether, you know, whoever it is. And if there's enough of that, I will then bring that back to the tour and go, you were holding me back from monetizing. I totally understand the networks are paying you, but here's a piece that won't threaten the networks that I can monetize through coverage or through whatever. So can you help me? And I will say, to the tour's credit, over the last 3 years, I would say, out of COVID, they have gone back to the network partners and not renegotiated, just figured out ways. And our actual the parameters around what we can do on site has actually gotten a lot more flexible. And we have been able, so they're actually, it's positive that the feedback did get heard. The tour's like, we have to figure this out. And it has gotten better, but it's still
it's just
a little archaic, but it's they're trying to change, but they're in the middle of a contract right now. So it's like, they're gonna have to go and renegotiate and be like, this is a 10-year media rights deal, and are you carving out value that we have, or there's this new, you know, so it's,
because I mean, my mind was going to, like, how do they not hamstring you when, and yes, like, once it's posted and, you know, they can get cease and desist and they can tell people to pull footage down, but there's so many, you know, Bro Does Golf, and you know, there's a million variants. I don't want to give anyone a specific shout out, right? But
there's a lot.
But they go and they have their crew and their you know, their streaming and you know, from the course, and you know, some are taking advantage of living close by to some of these pros and, you know, kind of jumping on their latest win or jumping on their publicity. So I was wondering if that ends up being something that, you know, you're kind of contending with, right? Because in essence, then, if they're walking the course, they may have more access than you, right? And there's what people can see and view through their live stream is, you know, going to be something that they're not necessarily going to be able to police the same way. So.
They're not. And you just, I mean, you touched on a subject that we could probably spend a weekend talking about, because when you look at, like, I'm just going to speak specifically from the PGA Tour standpoint, the players don't own their rights. If you're a PGA Tour player and you hold membership with the PGA Tour, you now have the ability to play for $20 million. You have all these things you can do to make a living, but your media rights, those are carved out separately, and now the tour is going to sell those, like your name, image, like all of that. And Phil Mickelson talked about this a decade ago. He's like, that's not right, and he threw up a big stink, and the tour's like, no, but Phil, you're playing for about $200 million this year. Like, those purses come from somewhere, right? TV dumps money into the purses. Like, you've traded this for this. It's not like we took it all away, and like, these purses come from. So I mean, there's a healthy, and I am such a, like, I don't need to be discussing this topic because, like, I'm not a tour player and I don't understand the friction. But I think what you've seen over the last few years is you've seen the tour and the networks try to figure out a way to loosen those to where everybody wins, and TGL pops up, right? You have this new thing where players can monetize themselves on a new media platform with new teams. It's outside the PGA Tour. that is a new way for them to monetize their brand and their image. You have players doing stuff on their YouTube channels, things like that. But they have to be careful because Gabby the fan can go to our tournament and record something and, oh my gosh, did you check that out? And post it. No issues. Gabby puts on that great hat she's wearing and she does the same thing. Done. Yeah. Like, it's like, so it's like, does that make sense? I mean, yes in one sense, no in the other, but it's tricky with on the tour with players as independent contractors, because then you get, to your point, we won't need to mention all the different YouTubers that are out there and the influencers, but the tour's trying to figure out how to bring them in without giving away the things that are the most valuable to the tour.
That's probably the catch-22, right? Because they are bringing more eyeballs to the sport. You know, there's an indirect benefit to that.
There is, because they want to grow the game. Right. Everybody wants to grow the game, right? Like that's a very interesting term to define.
Well, a perfect example of this is in the WNBA right now, because they were bringing in, you know, for a long time, it's who wants to cover our league. Who's going to be there? So there are so many independent folks who come in and have press passes come in. Now you have so many people, and you know, at the WNBA draft, I mean, it's just saturated.
Yeah.
But how do you walk it back? Because these people have been there since the early days of the league, and they are a big part of this grassroots. So now, just because NBC Connecticut wants to come in and say, well, who's more legitimate, whatever. So it's a big thing, but we are really seeing that a lot right now. And when you can't walk it back once you let everybody in, and what's the right thing.
Tough.
So I don't know. I do know there is no perfect answer for this right now.
Just to go back to when I was talking about the partnerships, where my mind was going kind of with this idea of reinvigorating or resetting Connecticut's presence in sport. You know, so much of Connecticut is biosciences and insurance or manufacturing. Much of the innovation has come, you know, from the physical. Yes, okay, the rules of football in 1880, but you know, these firsts of broadcast in ESPN or the wiffle ball and you know, the frisbee and things like that. Is there the next sort of boom of opportunity for, you know, for medical, you know, in bioscience research for, you know, for sport, or is there in technology for shot tracking, or that's where I was, you know, wondering if there's a ripe opportunity for businesses to come and try and innovate here and try and start up, you know, the next chapter of sport.
So here's what I would say, that Andy Bissett is the EVP and CAO at Travelers that I've worked with for the last 20 years. Like he and I have been, I've been very fortunate to work with him for 2 decades. And the culture that Travelers wants to have at this tournament when people walk on property is we wanted to create this anticipation. What are they doing? What did they do this year? What did they make better? Like, very simple feeling. We wanted our fans to have it. We want the media to have it. We want to surprise them. We want to be like, hey, we've actually been thinking about you all year, and here's what we did. Here's what we tweaked, stuff like that. So the fact that we are trying to bring in global brand, I mean, we know we have the weight and the responsibility to represent Connecticut on the global scale. Like, that, we know we have that. And if we screw it up, we have tarnished a brand of a state. That will keep you up at night. Right? When you bring in global brands and they're like, they can't see, this is why they can't handle whatever, this is why they can't do this. Like, you know, you are carrying that weight. So what we try to do is, for the big companies that come in, setting the tone of, wow, okay, we came in here and this was different than the 30 other markets that I've activated in. And that reputation and that feeling is Connecticut. Like, it's like, Connecticut is one of the scrappiest places I've ever lived. Like, it is like, oh yeah? Okay, we'll figure it out. You know, and so when you have that, and then you actually see it, I hope you've seen it with the Travelers Championship, is every year we've tried to get better as a sporting event, as reputationally with the players, with the tour, and they're like, oh my God, like, they're figuring this out. They did not have big market money. They did not have all these other things that, you know, I would say are, you know, fruit of trees in big markets. Oh, let's just pick it off. Like, we've had to dig in the soil, plant the tree, grow the fruit, prune the branches, and guess what? Now this is our fruit, that we are so proud of. And I think when you have people that have been part of that, the companies coming can't help but see that, and they're like, okay, I want to hire people who have this mentality. I want to be in a state that is going to figure it out. I want to be in a state that has a little bit of a chip on its shoulder to get better and to compete with Boston and compete with New York and brag about why we're not Boston and New York. Like, I remember...
It's an interesting perspective.
I remember somebody said something to me, and actually I was so stupid I wasn't even picking up on what they were saying, but they were talking about negatives about Connecticut. They're like, oh, Boston has this, New York has this, and I thought they were being negative. And I was like, I know, right? I know. Like, we don't have that. They're like, no. Oh, you didn't understand what I was saying. Because I thought they were like, yeah, Connecticut, we don't have to deal with this. We don't have to deal with this. And I was like, I know. And I'm like, oh, I missed that totally. Which happens in my marriage all the time. But I'm like, oh, that's what you meant? But I think when you have that culture, when people step into that culture here, I think that is so good for our region that they're like, I want to be a part of this. I want my company to be here.
It's an interesting persona you've created in the tournament, and is differentiating it, right? 'Cause, you don't have the history of Augusta, the esteem of Pebble, the weekend warrior affinity of Bethpage. There are all of these sort of underlying identities to many of the kind of known courses or tournaments. So I think the approach you're taking is pretty interesting.
It's like a stewardship. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I've used that word before. I 100% agree with you.
Great.
And his co-hosting duties are over.
I've done my job once again.
I guess just kind of, wrapping up, like, it's got to be tough coming off of the Open, and, it's good, and, there's some visibility.
Yeah.
But, part of what people always like to see is that, like, they're coming and they're hanging out in the community and they're here longer than just the 5 days, right? Like, as far as the players go, or, they're staying in that, so-and-so's renting out their house as an Airbnb, and they're staying there, and some feel-good stories about how they're kind of immersing themselves. Have there been any, is there a push, or is there to try and extend the weekend at all to make it more of a destination for the players to sort of stay in town and be seen in New Haven or on the beaches, like that kind of thing?
In line, I spoke just to dovetail on that. Like, does that might also like incorporate the role of the public and private partnerships, right? Yeah. So it's like, is the state or is Hartford or whoever, are they working with you to help encourage what BJ is talking about?
So yes, short answer, yes. The state has been a great partner. New Haven's been awesome with the pizza, and like there's actually a funny story there. But I have to say a quick story. I'm talking about. Do you want to cut me off?
No,
Okay.
This is your wheelhouse. This is great.
But I had it was 2000 and probably 7 or 8. It wasn't Gabby, but a reporter.
I was still in high school.
Yeah. So a reporter. I was not. We had the week after. We've had the week after the Open since 07, right? So almost this is our 19th year doing it. And I remember in 07, a reporter asked me the question saying, what did you do to piss off the PGA Tour where they gave you the week after the U.S. Open? You guys will never have a successful event. And I was like, great, super excited to be here, I don't even know what I said. But
I'll try to top that.
Like, literally, that was the question. And fast forward, so what we did was, and again, I mentioned Andy Bissett earlier. Andy was on the 1980 Olympic team, and his mentality as an Olympian is, I will outwork you. Right? Like, I will figure out a way to work harder, be stronger. Like, I will figure this out. And so he was there, and Andy and I were just getting to know each other. And they said, you guys will never make an event the week after the U.S. Open. And we talked about it, and we said, all right, we have a couple options here. And kind of a little term that we came up with, we said, the date is not going to make the tournament. The tournament is going to make the date. And that's a very different philosophy. And so we started asking questions. And I think being curious, not to Ted Lasso, I love it. Like, be curious. Like, ask questions. Why is the week after the U.S. Open bad? And we went to media partners. Why is it bad? Went to players, went to caddies, went to wives, went to like anybody that would talk to us.
They're traveling anyway. They're going to play in the tournament.
Anyway. We're going places, and we're going. Why is the week after the U.S. Open bad? Oh, we're just tired. We're there. Like, and we had this list of like 20 things, and we're like, we can deal with all of those. Like every single one that we got, like we can deal with. So we started chipping away. We have probably one of the best daycare programs on tour. The families call it Camp Travelers because what we do is we do day hikes. We bring all these activities to daycare. Like the kids ask their parents to come to Travelers because we take such good care of them, because traveling with families was one of the things on the list. And we're like, oh, we can solve that. Like, again, I had young kids. I'm like, I'll bring my stuff from my house. Transportation from the U.S. Open was another one.
Sam's got a bounce house.
I was gonna say, we're inflating that. So then we started chartering a plane for the players. So we work with the USGA. Wherever the U.S. Open is, we tell the players, you can drop your car at this private airfield with a charter. You and your caddy and a family member can jump on the plane for free, no cost. Jump on the plane. We'll drive our car. You can drive your car there. It'll fly nonstop. We'll have all your cars there ready for you when you get off the plane, and we're going to make this super, super easy on you. And I'll never forget one of the players, it was Aaron Baddeley, one of those first few years. Aaron has like 7 kids, right? And he gets off the charter, and he had literally 1 kid over his shoulder. He had one in a thing, in a carrier, and like one was like on his back. So he had like 3 children he was hauling, and he looked at me and he went, I won't try to do his accent, but he's like, thanks, mate. This made it so easy to get here. I cannot thank you enough. And like then gets on. So like transportation was one. You go down the list, like we attacked all these. Fast forward like 5 or 6 years later, we had like 5 of the top 10 players in the world. And it was not Gabby, I wish it was. Another reporter put a microphone in my face and said, what did you do to get so lucky to have the week after the U.S. Open be a field like this? And I wanted to be like I had this moment where I'm like, I seriously just got asked that question. Like, are you kidding me? Like, we had just kind of, come this full circle moment.
And it was only luck.
And
it wasn't hard work.
It was lucky. But it's like, you have these things, like, when somebody just deals you something that they assume is bad, ask why. Like, why is that bad? And can we flip any of those things on its head? Some of them you can solve, some of them you can't. But for the week after the U.S. Open, like, we were able to solve to where we are now as a signature event, one of the top 8 events on the PGA Tour. Like, they literally had to pick a market that the players would go to, a golf course that they would go to, an experience that they want to have, and it got put to vote. And I remember Billy Horschel said this. He said, when Travelers came up as one of the signature events and the players were voting on it, they're like, oh, that's a given. We want that to be a signature event. Like, that's not even up for debate. And then they're debating all the other ones. And to get to that point where when we started off, it was like, man, how are we going to make this thing work? The week after the U.S. Open, to the point where the players are like, oh, yeah, that's one of the top events. Like, let's move on and talk about the other 7. And then we became a signature event. Like, that is, again, it's a testament. And I go back to Andy. Like, he is like, people are being negative. Like, let's talk about what the reasons are. And if we can solve it, let's solve it. And if we can't solve it, fine. But we're not going to sit here and whine about it. Like, let's figure it out. And
is there any specific event, either in golf or otherwise, that kind of gave you the most inspiration?
Oh, we've stolen ideas from everybody. Yeah. And honestly,
which one's the worst?
I know. But honestly, like, tournaments are coming and stealing ideas from us. Like,
well, that's the greatest form of flattery.
I remember during COVID when we were trying to figure out how to put on a professional sporting event in the middle of that. That was, I think I aged like 15 years during that year. But we had the USGA came, the NHL came. Like, they were trying to figure out what questions we were asking or what we were doing and things like that. But I mean, we stole ideas from everybody. I mean, Andy and I were on the road those first couple of years. We went everywhere. Like, what do you do? What do you like? What do you not like? I remember going into a TV compound one time where it was a rainy event. I think it was LA. And we were in the back talking to all the camera crews, and we're like, hey, what do you not like about this? Like, how can we make this better? And they're like, who are you? Like,
how did you get back?
We're like, we run the event in Connecticut, like, how can we make this better? And they're like, what? Like, and nobody was asking the questions. And so I think, asking questions and then actually delivering on recommendations that people give, that has been big for us. So anyway.
Gabby, besides Travelers, what's your sort of favorite event to cover?
I love covering the WNBA. I love covering UConn athletics, I mean, it's just been such a treat to have the men's and women's teams the last couple of years here. I mean, I've been fortunate enough, we talk about media partnerships and everything. We're fortunate enough at NBC that we have the Olympics connection. So with that, that's afforded me, your local sports anchor from Connecticut, the chance to go cover 2 Olympics. So I've been to I went to Beijing, which was the COVID games, which was just bananas, because that was, China in the middle of a pandemic, and I went alone, which, speaking of how much gear I carry, there's I'm there, I've got a backpack on the front, backpack on the back, tripod here, lights over here, camera, and my camera's not even in the bag because I have everything else in there. And there's still like a photo of me that like the crews from like NBC National still like circulate around. They're like, oh yeah, you're the girl. Like the next Olympics in Paris. They're like, we saw you. That's the girl I showed you that photo of. I'm like, what? So I think to me, it's not local, but it is, because what do? You go, why are you sending someone from NBC Connecticut to Beijing? Why are you sending somebody to Paris? It's because when I sat down and put my list together of Olympic athletes for Paris, I had 50 athletes, more than 50 athletes with ties to Connecticut. Now, some of those ties are very loose. Maybe they stopped somewhere at a rest stop on their way from Boston to New York, and they loved it. But most of the time, I mean, in the summer, we look at a lot of the basketball players who came through Connecticut. In the winter, it's really cool. We have, because so many athletes come, they live in Connecticut, but they travel to Vermont or New Hampshire where they find their love of skiing and snowboarding. And then, their home base is still in Connecticut. So why do we go? We go because all year leading up to the Olympics, I'm here in Connecticut meeting the families, talking to their siblings, and going around so that when I'm in Paris, I'm calling, Alexis Holmes, who's from Hamden. I'm calling her dad saying, hey, what section are you in? If you come over here, I can tell you're going to get to see your daughter right after she finished running in her first race. So cool. Because he can't call her, but I can call him and say that. And then, sure, do I get something out of that? A great big hug from her dad and daughter and on camera? Yes. But I know that I'm going to get Alexis coming through because I've met Alexis. I've met her parents. We've established a relationship. And then what do? We get to bring that to folks in Connecticut. And that's happening all the way, in Paris. And it's local content that nobody else can get, that no other broadcast is going to bring you. But we have a woman who just won a gold medal, and she gets to see her parents who have been and went to Hamden High. So I think my favorite, how do you top the Olympics? You really don't. But we've been so fortunate. We've covered Paige Becker's career for the last 5 years. The biggest thing in women's college sports, and I will argue that to the death over. but we just, because of that relationship, because of everything that because we show up to every practice and we're there and establishing this relationship, we just put out a half-hour documentary on Paige's entire time in Connecticut that doesn't just live here. That goes to Dallas, where she's going to play with the Dallas Wings. And then maybe people in Dallas are watching going, oh, I didn't know anything about UConn basketball. And then they're looking it up, and maybe they're watching. Maybe their kid ends up coming to UConn, and maybe not to play basketball, but they go to school here. So it's expanding that reach. It airs in Dallas, it airs in New York. And so something that we do, because we've established this relationship here, then has this reach. And with this push with Peacock, with streaming, they have the NBA and the WNBA partnerships coming up. And that's one thing where we say media rights deals are tough on us. We're thrilled to see that, because that's one where we benefit. And because we know that Peacock is going to be pushing WNBA games, we've got this great piece on Paige Becker's that is all local, produced entirely in-house, and then Peacock will pick that up. So they're benefiting. We're benefiting because our piece has a bigger reach, and then folks are literally able to watch that piece that was produced entirely by people who live and work in Connecticut on a national scale, because we have a national player and a national personality here.
That's really
so
cool. It's like the most pro-Connecticut episode that we've done. I love it.
Yeah, it's easy to be pro-Connecticut.
But you try to tell, I have such a hard time articulating this when you get in front of, I tried to explain it to Gino Auriemma and to Paige. I said in front, I'm like, I know that you didn't come here for me, but you being here and Gino, you staying here for 40 years, you've done so much because I get to come in and and yeah, I know you don't want to sit down for a half-hour interview with me, but you're going to put on a face and you're going to enjoy it and you're going to do a great job. And because you've chosen to be here, now I get to go take my platform and elevate this, which then reaches everywhere else. And so I tried, maybe that's how I needed to say it, because I certainly haven't articulated it to Paige's like, okay, like I just came here to play basketball, but thanks. So, when we get these great folks coming in here, you don't realize how much it's going to elevate, and their choice to come here makes our jobs easier. So.
No, that's really insightful, and that's ultimately the goal, right? Is to continue to elevate here outward, and yes, the shape of CT's future is somewhat inward facing right now, but it's to get people to change their perspective a little bit, first, and then we can try and tackle outward. But.
I just look at the math. Well, I mean, you just said that. Why would Gino and CD coach here for as long as they have? This will be the 19th year that Travelers is the title sponsor. It's the longest running title sponsor this event's ever had. Why? I don't need to sell it. Look at the math, right? There are some incredibly successful sports franchises, program, call it whatever you want. And it's because people are digging in and investing in it to make it really, really good. And it's not, I don't know. I'm like, okay, look at the successful things and look how long it's been here and look at who's investing in it.
Well, and I've worked in a number of different smaller markets, and I remember when Hartford Athletic initially announced that they were going to start a USL team, and I'm going, I just came from Rochester, New York. I just covered the folding of a USL team. I don't want to go and deal with that again. Being in Syracuse, the Syracuse Mets at the time, I don't know if they're still the Syracuse Mets. Anyway, minor league team, could not get a foothold, and their GM was doing everything. They were doing everything right, but they didn't have a foothold. And so then I come here and I'm like, oh, you cover the Yard Goats, and I'm like, another minor league team that I was watching. I was covering a dying minor league team in my last market. I don't want to do that, and then you come out here and you see, and Hartford Athletic, you go there on a Saturday night and it's hopping, and they have good crowds regardless of how the team's performing. Same with the Yard Goats. I went to the Yard Goats game the other day. I watched 2 innings of baseball. I walk people around, I eat my food, I go see the baby goats, and, half the time, and I love baseball, and I don't even watch it. So I think it's just, I've been in so many places. Why are people coming? Because if you give it to them, Connecticut needs it. We want things to do. In this
it's a community
state.
around the sport. It's the community that you're, the experience that you're, fostering for that time, that weekend when they were there, and we had Tim Restall from Yard Goats on, and not in these words, and maybe he'll get sort of mad at me, but it's less about the game, right? Because they're incentivized to really have transient players, right? The goal is to not stay in the minors forever. So for them, they have to focus on fan experience and the community and the the baby goats and those types of things. So any takeaway? You want to wrap it up?
I think this was an awesome episode, and I think I was kind of stoked listening to him. We are great. It's we do have it.
See, we are.
Flip the table over.
Oh, Nathan and Gabby, thank you very much for your time, your patience, and your insight.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah.